afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Mr. Earls for having me here. This is an honor to be able to speak today and tell you about the story of India. First, we'll start with the national anthems of the United States and of India. So may everyone please stand.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam. It was bright stars through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red anthems were singing.
And now the anthem of India.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभाशिष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
All right, thank you, everyone. You may be seated. So now let's dive in to the beautiful and diverse India. We'll start with the geography. India, also known as Bharat or Hindustan, is located in South Asia and has an area of 1.269 million square miles, meaning it is the 7th largest country in our world. It's bordered to the west by Pakistan, to the north by China, Nepal, and Bhutan, and to the east by Bangladesh and Myanmar. Its climate ranges from temperate to tropical. In the north, you can see snow, and in the south, you can have sunny beaches. On the west, it's bordered by the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal to the east and the Indian Ocean to the south. Now let's dive into the history. I love history, and I love talking about the history of India because it's so diverse and so interesting to see the different interactions between groups that have shaped the modern India we see today. We'll start with ancient India, the Indus Valley Civilization. Around 3300 to 1300 BC, a great civilization sprung up around the Indus River, which is in current modern-day Pakistan, but it also extended into India. It's known for its advanced urban planning and architecture, and a very interesting aspect of the Indus Valley Civilization is its egalitarian society. In fact, there is no evidence that's been found of a ruling class, and there's only been slight differences in the items found in graves, but there's no major class divide where, say, a king is owning the largest land, has the most money. It was a peaceful society, and very few weapons or evidence of battle have been found. There are over 1,500 cities and trade links reaching all the way to the Mediterranean. Here are some of these trade links. The ancient world was a lot more connected than we may perceive today. Here's one of the sites. There's still a lot of work that can be done in excavations and more research into the Indus Valley civilization. It's really a fascinating subject. And here are some artifacts. This one is very famous. And here's the undeciphered script of the Indus Valley. Moving on, we enter the Vedic period, from around 1500 to 500 BC. Following the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, Indo-European groups migrated from the northwest, and they brought with them their culture and beliefs, which mixing with pre-Vedic culture created the second great civilization of ancient India. It came with the composition of the Vedas, which are the foundational texts of Hinduism. They're basically pretty much the backbone of Hinduism. You can think of it as the Bible of Hinduism. And they brought with them their language, Vedic Sanskrit, which is related to Persian, Greek, and yes, even English, as you can see here. Starting in this kind of Central Asian region, they expanded and migrated throughout Europe, down through Persia and into India. And this gave rise to North Indian languages. Here, this is very interesting. These are some similarities that Sanskrit has with English. As you can see in Sanskrit, Pitra is father, Matra is mother, Bhratra is brother, and so on and so forth. There are many such words like this. And I like to highlight this because it shows that there may be many differences, as Mr. Earls was saying. There are many differences, but there's so much in common too. Now we come to the classical period. This was from around 500 BC to 500 AD. The major empires of the classical period were the Maurya Empire and the Gupta Empire. Some great achievements in science and technology occurred during this period. Our modern numerical system, including decimals and the idea of zero, emerged during this period. Brahmagupta developed one of the first methods of solving quadratic equations, and Aryabhat calculated the time of Earth's rotation. So he knew the Earth was spherical, and he calculated it to 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.1 seconds. That's fascinating because he's only a couple minutes off what we know now with such modern technology. And I like to highlight this because it shows that India wasn't isolated. It never was. Trade has been a vital aspect of India throughout its history. Here's a Greek description of India by the great historian Megasthenes. Truth and virtue, they hold alike in esteem. The greater part of the soil is under irrigation and consequently bears 2 crops in the course of the year. It is accordingly affirmed that famine has never visited India and that there has never been a general scarcity in the supply of nourishing food. Ancient India was a very advanced and developed civilization. Now, this is also another very interesting piece. Where do you think this statue of Buddha was from? Where was it found? Where was it dug up? You're probably thinking somewhere in India, maybe Central Asia. How far were the trade routes? Well, you'll be surprised to learn this statue was found in Sweden. The trade had reached all the way from India, passing through the Middle East, passing through the Mediterranean, through Europe, all the way till Sweden, where it was dug up. In addition, around this period, Christianity found its first start in India. Many people think it came with the British, but in reality, it first arrived in India in 52 AD with Saint Thomas. As you can see, the trade routes were very developed, and he followed this trade route here, reaching in what is now modern-day Kerala in South India. And so there's an ancient church there and a lot of history there. Now we come to medieval India from around 500 AD to 1500 AD. The major empires here are the Chola, Rajput, Delhi Sultanate, and Gajapati. Some important developments here are the introduction of Islam to India. This brought with it the cultural synthesis of Persian and Indic culture and language, but it also brought with it some downsides, such as the destruction of universities, and there was some oppression that occurred in this period. Now, I've been talking about North India a lot, but I'll highlight the development of the Chola dynasty. Around the 9th to 13th centuries AD, they were the dominant power in South India, and they expanded India's cultural and trading influence to reach all the way till Southeast Asia. And you may know of the famous Cambodian temple Angkor Wat. Basically, all of Southeast Asia has a great influence of Indian culture from this time period. And now we'll come to the Mughal Empire, which was a very pivotal moment in India's history. It was established by Babur in 1526 after the Battle of Panipat, and some important developments occurred in this period. India was finally united for the first time since ancient times, and there was a lot of development in culture, architecture, and art. Its downfall occurred through many factors, such as intolerant policies of a certain emperor, Aurangzeb, including temple destruction and the murder of the Sikh guru, which is a religious leader. Here's the Taj Mahal, which was built during this period. And as a response to these injustices that came, there you see the rise of the Maratha and Sikh empires. The Maratha Empire was founded by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and embraced tolerant governance and territorial expansion. As you can see, they took most of West India, Central India, and East India. The Sikh Empire is also very important to highlight, as Sikhs make up one of the major groups in India. Sikhi is a major religion, and it began around 1500 with Guru Nanak Dev Ji. He preached religious tolerance and unity and fought against injustice. Now we come to colonial India. After the breakup of the Mughal Empire, there was a power vacuum that formed. India was not united anymore, and the British were able to expand their influence. This started first with the British East India Company, but true rule of the British Crown only started in 1858 and lasted until 1947. It was partially motivated, actually, this is an interesting connection with America. It was motivated partially by the loss of the United States, as the British Empire had to look at their holdings around the world and find new sources of income. This brought with it many advancements, such as railway development and industrialization, but there was also failures, such as the drain of wealth and famine that occurred with colonization, as we all may know. Now here's something highlighting just how stark this drain was. It's a chart of the global GDP share of each major power. As you can see, starting the year 1 AD, you see China and India. India has a great share of the GDP. But then starting in around the 1700s, you see a decline as British influence expanded and wealth was funneled out of India and into the empire. Now we come to the independence struggle. Some key events of the independence struggle was the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857. It was a rebellion of Indian soldiers in the British Army, and it was caused by intolerance of religious beliefs. In fact, the grease used to fire the rifles of that time were made of some sort of fat because it had to light up. And the British supplied the Hindu and Muslim troops with rifle cartridges that used beef and pork, which are, as you may be knowing, which are considered, which was offensive to both Hindus and Muslims, that they had to bite it with their teeth to load their guns. And that was the first rebellion against British rule. But then later on, we see the emergence of Gandhi's leadership, the non-cooperation movement, and the Salt March. We see Subhas Chandra Bose and the Azad Hind Fauj, which was the first military response to British rule in India. And eventually their hard work and dedication paid off, and in 1947, India was independent from the British Empire, which we are here to celebrate today. And another important aspect of this is partition, which was started by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, where India was divided along religious lines, leading to bloody conflict and mass migration. This created the countries of Pakistan and East Pakistan, which is now modern-day Bangladesh. Now we come to modern-day India. India is the world's largest democracy, 642 million out of its 1.4 billion population voted this year in the elections. It has a GDP of $3.4 trillion, which is the fifth largest in the world, and has 6 to 7% growth per year. India is a growing market and is the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. Although this is great, there are still certain social issues, such as income inequality, growing polarization, and pollution. I'm sure we can also relate to some of these issues in the US. India is diversity. So now let's talk about some of the diverse languages, cultures, and art forms of India that make it what it is. Let's go to languages. There are 22 official languages, so pretty much each state has its own language, and there are hundreds of unofficial and regional dialects. Hindi is the lingua franca, or common language, of much of India. And another interesting part of this is that most languages of India have their own script. If you go to Europe, you see that most languages have the Latin script. But in India, something interesting is that each language developed, or almost each language developed its own script. You can see some of them here. They all share a common ancestor. Now we'll go to religion. You can find pretty much every major religion in India. Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Christianity, Buddhism, Jainism, and a community of Zoroastrianism, which was the ancient religion of Persia, who fled prosecution after the Arab takeover of Persia. They fled prosecution and they have a community in India. Here are just some of the many art forms of India. Try to include examples from many parts of the country. This is from the south, the north, the east. Now we go to the architecture. India has beautiful and diverse architecture. From this temple in South India, this Hindu temple in South India, to the Golden Temple of Punjab, which is the center of the Sikh faith. Here's the Jama Masjid which is called a mosque in New Delhi. And here's the Taj Mahal, which you're probably familiar with in Agra. Now we come to music. Indian classical music is divided into Hindustani in the north and Carnatic in the south. But each state and community has its own unique folk music traditions as well. Bollywood music, which is basically India's version of pop music, is popular from Afghanistan in the west to Bangladesh in the east. And here are just some of the instruments popular in India. You may be knowing the tabla, sitar, and harmonium. Here are just some of the many festivals of India. Diwali, which is the festival of lights, celebrating the victory of light over darkness. There's Holi, the festival of colors, known for its vibrant color throwing and celebratory spring. And it celebrates spring. Eid is celebrated by Muslims around India with prayers, fasting, and gatherings. And Pongal is a harvest festival celebrated in Tamil Nadu, which is in the south, with feasts and rituals. Thank you, everyone. I hope I helped deepen your understanding of India, its history, and its culture. Are there any questions? Of course. Well, the wealth extracted from India was a major share of the wealth of the British Empire. Exactly. That's how India contributed a lot to the cash flow of the British Empire with all of their industries. And India was also a great market for the British to sell to, such as with their textiles, which then, as a response to that, there was the handloom movement, because there's British domination of the textile industry in India. And therefore, as a response to that, Gandhi and other figures in India led the movement to use homespun fabrics, handloom fabrics that were made in India for Indians. All right, thank you. Yes, what's the question? Yes, that's very much true. Hinduism as a concept actually comes from the Indus River. It is more of a geographical description, really, than a religious description. Um, it's a collection of religious beliefs and various philosophies. Like under Hinduism, there's belief in there's so many different philosophies of Hinduism, such as there's the philosophy of Dvaita or dualism. There's Advaita, non-dualism. There are different sects of Hinduism like um, Shakti worship or Vaishnavism. So there's a whole vast array, and you can find pretty much any. You can find so many different beliefs under the umbrella of Hinduism. It's not like Christianity where there's one Bible. There are thousands of scriptures. Obviously, the Vedas are the first scripture of Hinduism, but you'll find thousands of scriptures, thousands of different philosophical beliefs. Actually, I like describing Hinduism more as a philosophical structure for understanding the spiritual world. Any other questions? There are so many variations. I was actually thinking of whether I should put in the clothing of India. I can do that next time. But there's the sari, which you may be familiar with. Um, there's salwar kameez. There are so many different dresses of India, even men's and women's. And each state, each region has its own kind of flair they put on it, like with the fabric print, the fabric design. But yes, it's a whole nother world. I've noticed that too. Maybe it's just a cultural thing. Also, like in India, there's the like you've seen that maybe. It's just a cultural way. Like we nod in India, they do like that. It's just cultural differences. This is known as the Shahi Baja or Benzo, although it's not a benzo. And this instrument is actually a culmination of many different instruments. It kind of, to me, it represents India as a whole, as a mixture, a beautiful synthesis of many different cultures and many different groups. It has aspects of the typewriter, as you can see with these keys, and it was based originally on a Japanese instrument known as the koto. So in Japan, as the Western typewriter, the Western piano became popular in Japan, they kind of combined that with their traditional string instrument, the koto, to create an instrument similar to this that used keys to press the strings. And then this spread to India. They added more strings and they added different pieces to it to be able to play Indian music. So this instrument is really a combination of Western, of Japanese, and of Indian music, and I think that's beautiful. Alright, so I'll be playing a very popular Bollywood song from the 90s called Aaye Wo Meri Zindagi. one is also a famous Bollywood song. It's really old. It's from the 1950s. 50s, yes. All right, now I'll play a little short piece on the flute. This is the bansuri. It's basically a bamboo flute that's very famous in India.
It is a privilege to talk to you today about Odisse's rich history, how it has evolved over the years, and how it is currently practiced and embodied by practitioners all over the world. Odissi is recognized as one of the 8 Indian classical dance forms, and it originates from the state of Odisha in eastern India. But before we begin to discuss the current form and practice of Odissi, it is important to understand its history and its evolution, how it has journeyed from the ages of antiquity to the present day. The very first historical evidence of dance in Odisha can be traced to the 2nd century Sanskrit text, the Natya Shastra. This handbook describes in detail the rules and goals of the performing arts and mentions the Udra Magadhi style of dance in that region, which is present-day Odisha. Now, in addition to the literary evidence, there's also archaeological findings to suggest that dance existed in Odisha at this time. Inside the Udayagiri and Khandagiri caves in Bhubaneswar, which were built in the 2nd century, there are friezes depicting male and female dancers and musicians, as you can see here. The next set of major archaeological evidence is seen in the ornate carvings and sculptures on the facades of numerous temples throughout Odisha from the 6th to the 13th centuries AD. During this period, Odisha was subjected to various rulers of different religious beliefs who patronized the construction of these temples. Let's take a look at some of the most well-known temple sites. First, over here, we have one of the oldest temples found in Bhubaneswar. This is the Parasurameshwar temple. This was built in 650 AD. Next, we have the Mukteshwar temple, built in the 10th century AD. This site is well known for a dance festival, a modern-day dance festival that occurs annually. Another famous site is the iconic Konark Sun Temple, which is beautifully draped outside, if everyone saw that when they were coming in. This is structured to look like the regal chariot of the sun god. And it's also the site of another modern-day festival, dance festival. And lastly, we have the Jagannath Mandir in Puri. Please take a look at the spire at the top of the mandir, the cone-like shape. Please note this because it will be important when we discuss the costume of Odissi. This temple is devoted to Jagannath, who is considered Lord of the universe. He is the primary deity worshipped and revered in Odisha and is the presiding deity at any Odissi recital. Now, let's take a closer look at the facades of these temples, ornamented with intricate friezes and sculptures. If you look closely on the screen, you can see two friezes with dance poses on the left and the right. And as a wonderful treat today, we have a student of our academy, Avantika Academy, Maya Swain. Let's all give her a round of applause. Just a few words about Maya before we get started. Maya is 13 years old, and she has been passionate about dance since she was 5. For the past 6 years, I have had the privilege of training her at the Avantika Academy of Odissi Dance. And in the future, Maya aspires to promote the beautiful art form of Odissi at a global level and uphold her personal commitment to a lifetime of learning and growing. So thank you, Maya. Now, what Maya is going to do, which is going to be a wonderful visual treat for you, is she's going to translate the poses that you see in these ancient archaeological friezes. And she's going to demonstrate how it is practiced in by current practitioners in modern day times. So on the left, we have the classic, the iconic Alasakanya. Alasakanya is the languid girl in her full range of emotions and moods. You can see how similar she is to the frieze on the left. This is the pose that we're talking about, and this is how we would do it in modern day times. Very similar, almost identical. Beautiful, thank you, Maya. On the right, we have a dancer in the pose in the center, and she's surrounded by her musicians. So this is the dance pose in the center. And if you look to the lower left, you'll see 2 musicians holding the mardala, or Indian drum. If you look to the lower right, you'll see a musician holding the venu, the flute. And 2 musicians in the middle of the left side holding the manjira, or cymbals. Thank you, Maya. After the presentation, Maya will actually be performing a dance piece. Yes, she did wonderfully. A round of applause for Maya. So she'll actually be performing a full dance piece which will depict all of these poses that you just saw, the Alasakanya and all of the musicians as well. So now that we've taken a look at the facades of the temples, let's journey inside these temples to understand the religious practices and worship that happened on a daily basis. From the 13th century to the mid 20th century, especially in the Jagannath Temple of Puri, there existed a ritual of worshiping the deity through dance. And the young women who performed this dancing ritual, they were known as Maharis. And they were considered brides of Lord Jagannath, the deity that they worshipped. The Maharis often performed songs from the Gita Govindam, which is a Sanskrit poem which was written in the 12th century by poet Jayadeva about the eternal love between Radha and Krishna. These love songs, in fact, remain one of the centerpieces of the Odissi repertoire even today. In addition to the Mahari practice, there was another significant tradition performed at the time, known as the Gotipua tradition. Gotipua literally means one boy. Goti, one, pua, boy. In this tradition, unlike the Mahari one, young prepubescent boys would dress up in female garb and perform in public. And this style showcased extremely flexible, acrobatic movements. They would create tableau-like formations depicting ancient mythology. And this was known as Bandha Nritya. Now, during colonial rule in India, the Mahari tradition, like the larger Devdasi tradition, which existed in other regions of India, it clashed with the Victorian ideologies of the British. So the British launched the anti-Nach campaign in Madras. And soon the Mahari tradition lost its esteem and patronage due to this changing social landscape. Maharis lost their livelihood, their reputation, and their art was almost driven to extinction. The Gotipua tradition, however, the one you saw on the previous slide, that remained, that continued. After India gained independence in 1947, which is what we're here celebrating today, there was an effort to revive Indian heritage and culture in keeping with a rising national and regional consciousness. And it was a generation of former Gotipuas who came together to reinvent and restructure a classical dance form that Odisha could claim as its own. They called it Odissi. The great gurus, along with the eminent scholars, formed a group known as Jayantika. Jayantika included personalities shown here, like Guru Pankaj Charan Das in the center, Adi Guru, the first guru, Guru Kelu Charan Mahapatra, who is arguably one of the most famous gurus of Odissi today, and Guru Deva Prasad Das. Guru Mayadhar Raut, not pictured here, was also instrumental. What was their mission? Their mission was to codify the grammar and vocabulary of Odissi, create a repertoire, and design a costume for the modern day performing art to be seen and performed on proscenium stages across the globe. Together, through their combined knowledge of the various allied art forms of Odisha, like the Mahari and Gotipua traditions, theater and martial arts like Chau, their extensive textual and architectural research, they laid the groundwork for modern Odissi. And so now let's talk about the grammar of that modern Odissi. We have Maya here again to demonstrate. There are two postures, two classic postures in Odissi, very iconic postures. The first is the chauka, which is a symmetrical square-like stance representing the state of balance and preservation as personified by the deity Jagannath. So if you can see here, Maya is standing in this very symmetrical-like position. She has 90-degree bends in her elbows, and she's squatting in a deep plie over here. And you can see this is very balanced. This represents balance. It represents preservation. The next posture is very different. It's the Tribhanga posture. Now, this posture, as you can see, it's asymmetrical. It has a triple fold bend, one in the knees. I'll come over here so I can show you. It's a triple fold bend, 3 bends, one in the knees, one in the torso here, and one in the neck. Now, this creates a very sinuous pattern, an S-like shape. And this is very iconic and unique of Odisha. Now we'll talk a little bit about the costume, the stunning costume that the great gurus of Jayantika created. So as you can see, Maya is wearing this beautiful handloom sari from Odisha that has been very intricately stitched together with pleats down the front. Maya, can you just sit in kumbhapada or chokapada so they can see how the pleats spread out? Isn't that beautiful? And then probably the most unique feature, distinctive feature, is that flower crown that you're seeing. That's called the tahiya. And the tahiya is made of sholapet reed. And it's carved. Do you want to turn around, Maya, so they can see the back? It's carved to look like various flowers in the shape of a sun. And there is a vertical component that Maya's not wearing currently, but you can see in the photo. And lastly, really quickly, we'll talk about music, which Krishna also gave us a beautiful taste of, and Sanjeev Bhaina. The musical tradition of Odisha has always been an integral part of dance historically. So Odissi is its own unique genre, but it does have components of both the Hindustani and the Carnatic traditions, the North Indian and South Indian traditions. In modern day Odissi, there are usually 4 to 5 musicians that accompany the dancer. They include a vocalist, a mardala player. You can see that it's in the picture over here. It's a 2-headed drum. A flutist, bansuri or venu, as they may say. A sitarist, which is a stringed instrument similar to the guitar. That's also pictured here. And, or there may be a violinist. This is obviously added later on, as violin is a Western instrument. And that's it. And now to conclude this presentation, we present Battu. Battu will be performed again by our dear student Maya. Battu is a piece dedicated to Lord Shiva. It depicts the sculptures on the facades of the Konark Sun Temple, seen earlier in the presentation. The dancer strikes a pose of a musician holding the veena, the stringed instrument, the venu, the flute, the mardala drum, and the manjira, the cymbals. She will also depict the alasakanya, the languid girl, and the girl with the darpana, the girl holding the mirror. All these sculpturesque poses are punctuated with dynamic movements and intricate footwork, giving the illusion of these temple sculptures coming to life. Battu Nritya in Rag Mohana, set to Ekatali, choreographed by the brilliant Guru Kelucharan Mohapatra, performed by Maya Swain and directed by yours truly.
Tirakata takata tirakata takata. Ada habis. Ada tirakata takata.